So now that you're fully convinced that layers of abstraction is a great idea, we can show you the layers of abstraction that the internet uses. And it's kind of similar to our mail analogy. It's called the OSI model. It stands for those words. I will never remember what they stand for, and you don't have to either. Now, the first thing you'll probably notice is that the numbers are kind of weird. They go 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and that is not how numbers work. The reason why it's weird like that is because this model is kind of old. It's from the 1970s, and layers 5 and 6 were originally defined, but nobody uses them anymore. That's why they're missing. So nowadays, there's only 5 layers that we think about: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7. And once again, as we go through these layers, you can think about the layers of abstraction. Every layer provides a service to higher layers and relies on services from lower layers. And what's great is you can switch out what's happening at each layer without affecting all the others in the stack. OK, I don't know what that is. That's OK. OK, so starting at the very bottom, we have the physical layer. This is the equivalent of the pigeons or the mailman, moving data across space. So the only goal here is to send bits from point A to point B and encode them from digital bits into some analog signal. For example, high voltage, low voltage, photons if you're using optical fiber, modulation if you're using radio waves. But ultimately, the goal is just to move data from point A to point B using some sort of physics or electrical engineering magic. And that's basically all we'll talk about at the physical layer, since we are not in electrical engineering class. So that's all you see: point A, point B, a bunch of bits traveling between them. That's the physical layer. What comes next is how you use the physical layer to connect not just 2 devices, but all of the devices in a local network. So once you have this physical building block that can carry bits from point A to point B, you can use it to connect up everybody in a local network, and that's layer 2, sometimes called the link layer. So now we're able to send data from one device to another device inside this local network. And it relies on the service that we provided at layer 1, which was sending bits across space. Now, there's different things you can do at the link layer. We won't talk about it in too much detail. The most common protocol that you might have heard of at layer 2 is something called Ethernet. So once you connect up everything in a local network, you have something that looks kind of like this. You have 4 computers, for example, and they're all connected with a single wire. So what I'm showing here is one wire that has been plugged into all 4 computers, and I've created a local area network. Now, what's happening on these wires is not my concern. How the voltages work, that's layer 1's problem. My only problem at layer 2 is plugging this into 4 computers and then deciding how these computers talk to each other. That's what layer 2 is responsible for. So once I build this local area network, I can now start thinking about sending messages. So how do I send a message? Well, I could just write something, hello, and then send it. But if I send that message on the wire, everybody receives it, and it's not really clear who the message is for. So when you send messages, maybe you should include additional information. For example, you should say, actually, this message is for C. So even though I'm sending it on this wire, B and D should discard this message. It's not for them. And C should listen to this message because this sequence of 1s and 0s is intended for C. And that's something that your protocol would have to specify. You could also include something like who the data is from. You could say, this is a message from A. So this way, if C wants to send a reply message, they can send the reply to A. So you can also include information about who's sending the message or who the message is being sent to. And layer 2 is responsible for keeping track of all of these things. Now, one quick note about layer 2, although we won't spend a lot of time here either, is that in reality, you don't have to connect everyone up with a single wire like this. So you could also use a sequence of multiple wires or wireless links to connect up a local network. So this picture is also a valid depiction of a local network, just like this one was. Both are OK. Which one you use depends on the network that you are designing. But ultimately, it's still connecting everyone inside of a local network. So just know that sometimes you might see a local network that looks like this. Sometimes you'll see a shared wire like the one you saw on the previous slide. But all of these are valid layer 2 local networks.